The interior lineman, defensive tackle, becoming increasingly more important in the NFL because, well, guys like Fletcher Cox and Aaron Donald and even Ndamukong Suh, well, 3-year-old Ndamukong Suh, not Ndamukong Suh now, just dominating the NFL. We'll see who in this class distinguishes themselves. Brennan Albert is here. I'm Adrian Fedke. So I'd say another pretty good interior lineman class.
Definitely is, Adrian. I think this is more better of a depth interior line class than it really is exterior defensive line class.
Yeah. And maybe this one isn't necessarily one that's going to get after the quarterback, but definitely one that can hold the point of attack in the run game.
I agree with you, and I think you and me are the same. And my number one is Vita Vea, and I like Vita Vea because I think he's a great athlete. I mean, think about this: dude's 300 plus pounds, and he played on punt, so he was running down guys. And if you put on the Fiesta Bowl where they played Penn State, he makes a tackle. That's 300 pounds. So that tells you this dude is an athlete, not an elite pass rusher, which is his big knock. But first and second down, he's a two-gap defender. He's going to be able to hold the point of attack very well for you.
Yeah, they just had a nose tackle go a couple years ago by the name of Danny Shelton, and Vea is going to probably play that nose tackle spot as well. I mean, like you said, freakish athleticism for a guy that size, strength to hold the point of attack, also quickness for his size as well. But my question for you is nose tackles, I mean, that's a position that kind of seems a little bit devalued in the NFL, so Vea may not go as high as we think. I don't know. We'll see, but we both really like him a lot.
I think that's a fair thought process you have, Adrian, but also what you're talking about when you talk about nose, that's for 3-4 teams. If you're a 43 team, you're not really caring too much about it. So it's a bit of a two-way street. Like the Ravens are a great example. The Ravens typically haven't taken a nose early, except for Haloti, who's obviously just an absolute freak. Yep. But the Ravens are a good example. They're going to look for a big dude. They're going to draft him late. The Chargers are going to do a similar thing too. So it just kind of depends on what your defensive scheme is.
Yeah, and the other thing about Vea, he's the only one that doesn't need the mittens on his palms. Goes out there barehanded. I love it. Do you think the Nada comparisons are fair?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, as far as just size and athleticism, it makes a ton of sense. Obviously, the Polynesian background makes it the easy comparison, but It's not even the Polynesian background. His play style, his athletic ability, very, very similar to Haloti Nada. Like I said, he's more of an athlete of a big boy, and he's really, really dominant on first and second downs. And on third downs, he's probably just going to hold up the guard to allow that defensive end to get one-on-one. He's not going to be a 8-sack guy inside in the NFL, but he's going to do a lot of the dirty work for you.
Yeah. All right, number 2 on my list, Daron Payne, bringing the pain from Alabama. Oh, that was too easy. So another guy that's like freakish speed and athleticism for a guy his size, not as big as Vea is. I mean, his tape against Georgia and Clemson in the playoffs, really, really impressive. He's also a guy that only needs one arm to tackle. I mean, he doesn't even need that to get off a block. He just needs to put out his arm out there, and he can make a tackle. He gets some push in his bull rush, so he can get after the quarterback probably a little bit more than Vea. But Daron Payne, my number 2.
I think I'm with you. He's my number 2 guy as well. Now, he is a motor runs hot and motor runs average. You put on the last several games, the playoffs, dude was a freaking dominant guy. But if you watch the early stuff of the season, he looked like he was going through the motions. Now, I can talk myself in and out of this as a pro and a con. As a pro, I could say, look, he's playing at Bama, right? Like, they know they're going to be one of the Final Four teams. He's pretty much just saying, like, hey, I'm going to keep myself cool. I'm not going to hurt myself. But at the same time, if I want a stud, then I want him to be running hot all the time. Probably he's much better of an interior pass rusher than Vita Vea, but he's a little inconsistent. So he's my 2. But at the same time, if he's drafted in the top 15, I'm not surprised. If I see him slide a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised either. Because think about Jonathan Allen. Alabama has a history of these big-time defensive players not having great shoulders, not having great neck situations. Then all of a sudden they start to slide in the draft because of medical.
Yeah, and they've gone through a slew of defensive tackles in the NFL draft. Jonathan Allen, you got Dalvin Tomlinson. I think they had another one too recently. Who was that one? I forget his name, but he was the latest one, and he's another one going in the first round.
Yeah, for sure. There's a factory there, and that's the thing. Like, if you are going to knock someone at Bama, you're going to be like, oh, he doesn't have a lot of film. yeah, he doesn't have a lot of film because the guy he was playing behind was a first-round pick probably the year before.
Yep, exactly. All right, number 3 for me, Taven Bryan of Florida. So the thing that immediately stands out to me is his get-off right off the snap. Very, very impressive. Lots of explosion there. Really active hands, and another guy who kind of has a motor on him. So Taven Bryan, that's my number 3. Again, a lot of J.J. Watt comparisons.
I think that's a little bit of a farce.
I think so, too. I think it's a little much.
Yeah, I mean, when you're comparing one of the greatest defensive linemen of our generation, you got to be like a top 5 pick to earn that. You know what I mean? Like when people are like, "Oh, Saquon Barkley's LT's Marshall Faulk," I can buy that because he's going to go in the top 5. Yep. You can't tell me a guy's J.J. Watt and say he might not be drafted in the first round.
Yeah, that's good.
So, Taven Bryan, all right, he is a very athletic guy, can move up and down the line. He's the son of a Navy SEAL, so you know he's a tough SOB right off the jump. He has a great ability to play every technique from the 2 to the 5. I don't think I would see him in a 34. I think I see him in a 43 defense. But the one thing I will knock him for, not a lot of production. A lot of times it looks like he's kind of late to finding the ball, does a really good job at get off physical hands, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, yeah, where's the football? It doesn't look like it's all put together for him. Upside is definitely very high for him, though. I see him more in that 43, probably in the late 20 situation.
Okay. All right. So our top 3 is the same. We'll see if we're the same at number 4 because my number 4 is B.J. Hill of NC State. Kind of gets overshadowed there on that defensive line because you got a lot of talent there, especially when you look at Bradley Chubb. And then you got even his fellow defensive tackle, Justin Jones. But you look at B.J. Hill and Justin Jones, both of them at the Senior Bowl, they lit it up in those one-on-one drills. But you watch some of the tape, really solid run defender, really tough to push back. And again, like kind of gets lost in the shuffle there at NC State. Do you like B.J. Hill?
I do like B.J. Hill. NC State secretly, quietly, is going to have 3 or 4 defensive linemen drafted. So talking about the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the wolf is the strength of the pack. That's exactly NC State's motto, and that defensive line is showing that. So I do like B.J. Hill, but not in my top 5. My 5 is Maurice Hurst.
Oh, we're at 4. We're at 4.
4, sorry. He stole my 4. Numbers are hard for me, I swear. So Maurice Hurst, he's my 4, okay? He's my 4 because of all the defensive linemen has the most explosive get-off. Consistently, he's firing off the ball. His hands are low. He's very, very explosive off the ball. Very dynamic inside pass rusher. Whereas his con, some issues potentially about that heart murmur. So that came out first in the combine that, got a heart murmur situation, not sure about this. Came back, retested, tested out fine. Okay. So the thing you guys need to know is it's possible for players to fail the NFL's medical test and then pass the teams and vice versa. Just like it's possible for you to, pass the Eagles but fail the Redskins. So it's possible because every, doc is a little different. So he's a really unique one. I'm a big fan of him. If I'm a 43 defense team, I really like him a lot. Some of the other cool things about him, how about the fact that he drove Uber in college, which I think is so cool. A guy kind of humble beginnings, well-rounded. Yeah. But if I'm also being negative about him, he might play next to the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft in Rashawn Gary. That dude is a monster at Michigan. So he was getting a lot of help at Michigan. I'm still a big fan of him. He's my number 4 guy. Because of that heart, he could go anywhere from 19 to 50.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that heart, and you already kind of got into it there. So need to ask the question. And just to go back a little bit from NC State, I mean, you talk about 3 to 4 guys going in the draft for them along their defensive line. It was only 10 years ago where they had 3 guys go in the first round. You had Mario Williams, John McCargo, I think is the other one, and there was one more that I named.
Danny Lawson.
There you go. So NC State, it's like silently defensive line you.
It really is, man. That's one of those ACC teams. Now, yeah. I'm an NC State fan because my roommate at IMG, he was a Wolfpack dude, so I pulled for the pack. So he's been telling me, man, this defensive line is something special, and they are.
Yep. Yes, they are. All right, my number 5 is Maurice Hurst, so really no need to get into him further. That's what I noticed on tape was that get off, the first step quickness with him. So he's my number 5, and you answered my heart murmur question, so no need to talk further. Who's your number 5?
Tim Settle from Virginia Tech, big boy. About
He's huge.
330, 6'3", 6'4", big boy. He's a big human being, can probably play the 3-4 nose, although I'd rather him in a 4-3. He's very disruptive. He reminds me a lot of Timmy Jernigan. Maybe he isn't a guy who's going to have a lot of sacks, but he's going to have a lot of pressures, and he's at least going to demand double teams. Guy who's probably going to go in that 50 to 70 range. And we'll say this, he's a little sloppy fat. And there's a difference between being big and sloppy. He's a little sloppy, so that's a little bit of a concern I would have for him. But as far as the ability to really be a gap shooter as a 330-plus pound human being, he's still pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, that was definitely the thing that I noticed right away was the sloppy fat. I mean, even though Deron Payne and Vea are probably they have more weight on them, that's muscle weight, more so than Tim Settle, who's a lot of fat there. It's very, very round, that belly, very round. But we'll see how he pays out in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. You look at Vita Vea, 347, but he's 347 and can cover punts. Okay, so 347, I'm not worried about that 347.
Yeah.
Settle 335, not really fluid, not really a super explosive player. He's very explosive in that he's a defensive lineman, but he's not as explosive as the other 4 defensive linemen I have ahead of him.
There you go. All right, that's about it. You got any sleepers in this draft?
I do, but let me kind of do a little screen share with everyone.
Oh, sure, yeah. I almost forgot about that.
All right, so I want to talk to you guys about techniques. So remember, 3-4, 4-3, very, very different. So depending on what your defense runs, you're going to value guys different. Baltimore Ravens probably going to favor Vita Vea significantly higher than the let's say the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah. Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to like more of Taven Bryant, Hurst type guys. So understand here, guys, that the techniques, that's where I think their NFL position is. A guy like Vita Vea, he's explosive, sure, for a big human, but I would never put him outside of the guard. I would say, hey, we are going to be inside, and that's all you're going to do, and just be physical SOB at the point of contact. Vice versa, Taven Bryant, I want him a little more outside. I want him to be able to be more of a true D-end in a 4-3 system. I think that's more of his cup of tea. And then if you guys did watch our Outside Edge show we did, I also have my edge guys up here too. So you kind of get an idea of how these guys are fitting in.
Yep. I love your little Excel spreadsheets, man. They're so beautiful. They're color-coded. I love it.
I think it's helpful too because you're going to hear this, guys. Oh, he's a 3 tech. He's a 1 tech. He's a 40. He's a 50. And you'll be like, well, what the hell does this mean? And this, honestly, this is one of the hardest things for people really to memorize. And I totally understand, especially when you memorize the eyes, the non-eyes. Then you think about, oh, well, he's playing a 9, the wide 9. That's great. But where's the wide 9 line up? Defensive linemen, they all have different skill sets, and they all have type of ranges. You're not going to have a 3-4 defensive end playing a wide 9 technique because that's not his body build and it's not his ability.
Yep. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. You got any sleepers there?
The kid from Sam Houston State is a guy I like. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. There's also a kid from Fort Hays State. So there's 2 schools, Fort Hays being a Division II school, Sam Houston State being an FCS program. So those are 2 lower guys that are both really explosive. Nathan Shepard is Fort Hays' state. I can't remember Sam Houston State's. Both of those guys, I would be surprised to see them in the mid-2s to the 3rd rounds. Nathan Shepard was a guy who looked really, really good in that Senior Bowl. But honestly, Adrian, you said that NC State guys, those are all going to be dudes in the NFL one day.
Yeah, those were the 2 that even stood out. The Senior Bowl was B.J. Hill and Justin Jones. Those 2, and I thought that was important for them to stand out, considering who they play next to when you look at Bradley Chubb. So, those are the 2 that I was had an eye on and got my attention at the Senior Bowl. So there you go. All right, anything else you got?
That's it. Biggest thing to know about defensive linemen, it's about what your defense does. Defensive linemen, you can't just line them all up and saying, okay, everyone's going to prefer this guy, because preferences in your defensive scheme is completely going to depend on how you rank your players.
There it is. That's Brendan Albert. I'm Adrian Fedke. Brendan representing the T. Hail the T. Yes.
Love Respect it. The T.
There it is.